Hello, for today's reporter story, I'm going to talk about what does a typical day look like for a reporter. So you will have, a particular schedule, and the schedules are usually broken down into the morning shift, which is pretty treacherous. For morning shifts, I typically got to work at 3:30 in the morning. So that, of course, means getting up, like at around 1-ish, getting ready, doing hair, doing makeup, being camera ready by 3:30 and getting to work and then doing a series of live shots for the morning shows depending on what's going on in the area, and then maybe putting together a package that could air later in the day or for the noon show, and then leaving work in like the early afternoon. So it sounds great in theory because you think, well, I have the whole day to do whatever I want, but generally around like 2:33 I would crash and be so tired that it would be really hard to do anything. So that is a really weird schedule, but for some people it really works, especially people with kids, because they can get home and totally be there for their kids, pick the kids up from school, make dinner. So it really works for a lot of people, and a lot of people get really used to it. There's also the day shift, which is more of a typical shift, like a 9 to 7 type of situation. And you would come to work, and there's usually a meeting with all the people, the reporters, producers, news director, and you talk about story ideas. Reporters have to bring story ideas to the table, and then everybody has a powwow and talks about it, and it's decided who's going to go cover what story, and then the reporters will go out and work on those stories, sometimes with photographers, sometimes not. It depends on the setup of the station. And they'll have the day to put together a story and then potentially do some live shots for the 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock shows. And then the night side shift comes in later at around like 3-ish p.m. and does the same thing. Meeting, story ideas, reporters get sent out, and their stories are going to usually be the ones that will go into like the 11 o'clock show. So that shift, you also usually have to do a little bit of a story or a rewrite or a redo that they can air in the morning show. And so you have to be thinking about that so that the morning show the next day has content as well. So those are the typical 3 shifts. I mostly worked the night side shift, so my rhythm to this day is still kind of nocturnal. I don't like getting up really early, and I tend to go to bed late, and I think it's because of doing that shift predominantly for over a decade. And what else can I say about it? I think that's kind of it. I just really wanted to talk about what the day would look like. Sometimes when you're out on stories and you might be focused on a particular story, you could get diverted to a breaking news story. That kind of stinks because you might be on a really cool story and working on something awesome. You interviewed everybody, and then you get a call from the assignment desk and they say there's breaking news, there's a murder or something somewhere, you got to go cover it. And depending on what time you have, if you get shifted to the murder, the other story might not even air. So I hated doing that, and I would call the people and tell them if that happened, I'm so sorry, this story's not even going to air. Because if it's topical, meaning like something happening that day, it might not work. It might be too old to air it the next day. So it really might never air. Sometimes somebody else can take it and edit it so it airs, or if you can work on both stories and figure out how to get them both done and edited, it can air, but sometimes it doesn't air. So that's another thing is the really moving around and being moved to different stuff. Sometimes you'll get a call early in the morning, go to this big breaking story, or there's a fire, we're putting everybody on it, or you might be on vacation and get that call. I was on vacation when 9/11 happened, and even though I wasn't reporting on the East Coast, it was a big story everywhere. So I had just gotten off a houseboat, and I had to drive a few hours to get to the station to start working on stuff around 9/11 when that happened. So occasionally you will be on call like that as well. So those are some of the details about kind of how the structure and setup is of different schedules and how the day goes.